When I was younger, I hated math. This is because I was told that there is only one way to get an answer correct, and I always seemed to get an answer a different way, so I thought I was wrong. This created in me a fixed mindset of I will never be right, so why even try? That followed me through school and created me a great math anxiety because no matter what, I still felt like I couldn't get the correct answer. This continued to stay with me, and so coming into this class, my mindset was that I'm not good at math, and so I won't be able to teach math. Because of this, I was extremely nervous about going 5 times to Johnson Elementary School here in Abilene, Texas to teach 4 5th grade students. I did not feel confident in myself that I would be able to lesson plan and teach what I had planned professionally enough where my students would understand it. Through this class, I have learned how to teach my students in a way that they will learn and grow in math. I have learned skills such as how to incorporate growth mindset, teach the language of math, assessment, and how to use manipulatives and tools to teach my students, which has ultimately cut out my math anxiety and hopefully the students that I will futurely teach as well. Throughout the progression of this class, my philosophy and mindset has changed about mathematics, and I will definitely use the skills that I was taught in this class in my future career. As Jo Boaler's talked about in her book, one of the ways to get rid of math anxiety is by creating a growth mindset in our students and change how they view themselves in math. One of the skills that I've learned to help my students is through sociocultural theory. This is what Vygotsky talked about, and he's stated that by using the zone of proximal development, this will allow our students to grow to their fullest potential. To do this, I will scaffold my students' learning. I want to scaffold my students' learning so they are challenged and use their full knowledge from help from me. This is valuable because when I use the zone of proximal development, we are challenging our students so that they are operating in a range of learning that is challenging for them. We are pushing our students, and sometimes that they may make mistakes. They are human after all. This is where growth mindset comes into play. We as teachers should take those mistakes, study them, and bring them forward to our students. We should do this because it is probably that our other students are also thinking in a similar way. We then value a mistake and bring it forth to discuss and see what was correct in the thinking and where the thinking went off the road a bit. This will help our students grow in their mindset of trying again and getting the answer correct rather than just giving up. By doing this, we are teaching our students the process standards. Those are problem solving, reasoning, improved communication, connections, and representation. We are teaching them this because we are incorporating those skills into our students to problem solve and think deeply about their math, communicate and make connections with other students, and also be able to show what they're representing through their math skills. Another theory that I learned about in this class will be beneficial to me is the constructivist theory. This theory was put forth by Piaget, and he said that students use their surroundings to construct their own knowledge, and this can be built upon from using their prior knowledge. This is something that I very much agree with and will use in my future classroom. As a teacher, I believe that I am more of a tool that helps bring light into light so that my students construct their own learning. I really saw myself doing this at my time at Johnston. One way I saw myself doing this was how I started my lesson each time. I started by going over the vocabulary we had as a review and that we would be learning about that day. If we do not teach the math vocabulary, we are doing in our students a disservice. When we teach students the vocabulary, we are giving them all the same level starting ground. This falls into the piece of equity. Instead of supporting our students to get on the same level, we should eliminate barriers altogether. Vocabulary is one way to start this. When we start talking and start with vocabulary, we are teaching all students that the foundation and groundwork to the skills that we are teaching them that day, and they will be able to understand more of what we are saying to them so they can understand the content in a deeper level. Another skill I will take with me in the future classroom is math tools. As a teacher, you have to get your students hand-on doing something the first few minutes. This is something also that I learned in this course. One way I did this was with the vocabulary. We played matching and dice rolling games that got my students involved, and I could see how this allowed them to construct their own learning and saw where they started to use the vocabulary and telling me how they found their answer. I've also seen this through Vygotsky's theory about creating a social learning environment. I saw that when we taught our students a social context, they tend to learn better and remember what we taught them longer. By teaching vocabulary like this, we taught our students to be social when learning. Another part of the tools that I learned about was manipulatives. This is also seen in Piaget's theory of constructivism. Math can be hard to understand, and manipulatives can help students conceptualize what they're learning. Conceptual understanding are the building blocks for future knowledge, and I brought many manipulatives in my lesson over these past weeks. Some included whiteboards, fraction circles, flip charts, dominoes, and many more. I learned that and saw this in my class. By using this manipulative, students were able to visualize and conceptualize what was happening when they were trying to solve a problem. By teaching them with manipulatives, we gave our students the opportunity to see and conceptualize what is happening in the skill they are learning, and by allowing them to do so, they will later visualize what they did in the future as they work problems. Another math tool that I learned is how to use in this class was anchor charts. Anchor charts are anchors for students to look back at and remember what we learned, so that by creating them with students, it was very important. If I did not use anchor charts, then my students would have been fairly confused of what I was teaching them because they would not have a place to organize their thoughts and visualize what they are learning. Another key component that I'll take away from the semester is the ability to assess my students well. Coming into this class, I only had the mindset if the student got the answer correct or not. I learned that instead of just seeing my students getting the correct answer, I really want my students to understand the skills that I was trying to teach them. I realized that I would not understand if my students fully met my objectives unless I went deeper into assessment. To do this, I learned how to create a skill-based checklist and was able to go deeper to see if my students were understanding the foundation and skill set forth of my objective. I also learned that I had to be really intentional about what I put in my checklist. I learned that my objective really is what I need my students to learn and master a certain guideline or technique. I then took those isolated skills and wanted my students to do well and created our assessment rubric. I did this because I knew that this was intentional about what I wanted my students to learn and that they would drive to meet my direct, guided, and independent practice in the lesson plan. By using the skills above, I was not only able to teach my students the math, but also the process standards that would go with them forever. Overall, I feel like after this class, I'm better prepared and also have tools that I will take with me. Just like Vygotsky and Piaget taught the importance of social environment and math tools, I will also see the benefits of using these and will do so in my future class. By using these things, our students will be able to visualize and conceptualize what they're learning so they can actually learn and not just learn and then forget. I also see the importance of a good assessment because I really want my students to make sure that they are learning what I ask for them. Education 370 has taught me how to put a lesson from paper to a lesson for students, ways to create representation and manipulatives for students, and also giving them the tools they need to succeed and meet the standards and objectives. I plan to use these in my future classroom, and I'm leaving this class no longer afraid to teach math and without math anxiety.